beautiful Alaska, a state of superlatives, tallest, biggest, longest, where centuries-old traditions endure and wildlife roam free. The last frontier is home to America's stellar public landscapes, the great parks of Alaska. Alaska's national parks are spectacular. The natural wonders found in the parks are extraordinary and rival those found anywhere in the world. They protect something rare and precious, open space. In most of the United States, national parks are islands of nature in a sea of development. In Alaska, national parks are the wildest areas of a still wild land, a reminder that just a few centuries ago, the entire nation was wilderness. No one person could know all of Alaska's 80,000 square miles of national parkland. Man is dwarfed here. Enormous cliffs, endless glaciers, and myriad peaks bombard your sense of scale and awaken a feeling of awe. Here are some of the world's last great wild places, and its immenseness is hard to comprehend. Alaska is home to the 14 tallest mountains in the United States, over 3 million lakes, 34,000 miles of tidal shoreline, and 51,000 square miles of glaciers and ice fields, including a glacier bigger than the state of Rhode Island. It is a challenging country, particularly in winter when snow and ice blanket much of the land. The clear air bites with cold, and the cool Arctic moon hangs in the evening sky. Winter is a time when beauty and danger are constant companions. Spring, the ice begins to melt. Breakup, the Alaskans call it. When the rivers run free, life returns to the frozen north. The summer sun brings a brief respite from the cold. The tundra is alive, with flowers, with birds, and the passage of hooves and the pounding of paws. Autumn's changing colors herald the approaching winter. The cycle is turning full circle. These seasonal rhythms govern life in the far north. Alaskan parks are a gigantic stage on which great dramas are enacted. The set is sensational. Mountains, lakes, forests, fjords, dunes, and glaciers. The characters are diverse, from millions of migrating birds to the giant brown bears. Alaska's human history is as fascinating as its natural history. This was the gateway for the first Americans who crossed over from Asia during the Ice Ages. Also for Russians who built a colony with fur profits. When the United States took over, gold drew people by the thousands to the far north, the fabled Klondike Gold Rush. Man's impact on Alaska is slight. Despite the harvest of gold, oil, fish, timber, and other natural resources, the largest of the 50 states has the fewest people, just over 500,000. Less than 10% of the state is inhabited. The last frontier is mostly wilderness, and its wonders are protected as national parks, monuments, and preserves. These parks exist as the culmination of a process which began in 1872 with America's first national park, Yellowstone, and continued with John Muir's efforts to protect what is now Yosemite. These two pioneering parks were models for the rest of the world. Sitka became Alaska's first national park in 1910. Mount McKinley was designated a national park in 1917, and monument status was granted Katmai and Glacier Bay soon after. No new parks were established for 50 years until 1976, when Klondike Gold Rush was created. When Congress passed the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act of 1980, it authorized the largest single addition of parks in the nation's history by adding 10 new areas. Today, over 60% of all America's national parkland is in Alaska, roughly 54 million acres. Not only do the park areas look different, but they are regulated differently. For instance, local people continue to hunt in some areas, following traditions developed over thousands of years. Alaska's national park areas are found in 4 regions. In the Arctic North, the Bering Land Bridge, Cape Krusenstern, Noatak, Gates of the Arctic, and Kobuk Valley. The Southwest's Lake Clark, Katmai, Aniakchak, and Kenai Fjords. Alaska's interior parks, Denali, Yukon-Charlie Rivers. And the southeastern parks, Wrangell St. Elias, Sitka, Klondike Gold Rush, Misty Fjords, and Glacier Bay. You can't drive to most of these parks. To explore them thoroughly, one must boat, canoe, kayak, walk, backpack, or fly. Our Alaskan adventure begins in Eskimo country. They still hunt caribou, but today, Eskimos keep one foot in the modern world. Their corporations manage great wealth, oil fields, hotels, and land areas adjacent to the parks. Songs and legends keep alive Eskimos' strong connection to the land. They revere hunting, believing the animal gives its spirit willingly to a hungry hunter. The parks of Alaska acknowledge and celebrate this traditional reliance on the land. Few people visit this northern tier of national parks near the Arctic Circle. Cape Krusenstern, an archaeological window to the past. Noatak, home to a magnificent river. The gates of the Arctic straddle the northernmost rampart of the Rocky Mountains. Kobuk Valley is a land of caribou and dunes. And finally, the Bering Land Bridge National Preserve. There once was an ancient pathway that joined Asia and North America. Over 13,000 years ago, ocean levels dropped, exposing the floor of the Bering Sea. From Siberia, it was an 80-mile walk to this point. Today, the bridge is 200 feet under the lapping waves of the sea. During the Ice Ages, much of the world's water was locked up in glaciers, vast ice fields. Parts of Alaska and North America were repeatedly covered in ice, over a mile deep in places. However, this land was ice-free, looking much as it does today. Across this broad plain, estimated to be 900 miles wide, came wildlife, caribou, muskox, mammoth, immigrants from Asia. People came too, following the herds. They hunted for meat and fur. Descendants of the first Americans spread out across North America, becoming the buffalo hunters of the plains, the cliff dwellers of the Southwest, and the pyramid builders of Mexico, eventually reaching the farthest tip of South America. Some stayed here. Their dwellings dot the coastline. Eskimos from neighboring villages hunt and fish in and around the preserve, a reminder that Alaskan parks are different. This corner of Alaska remains a gateway to Asia for migrating birds. Today, the land bridge lies beneath the Chukchi Sea and the Bering Sea, but this international park celebrates that ancient link to Asia. North, across the Kotzebue Sound from the Bering Land Bridge, is the gravel beachscape of Cape Krusenstern National Monument. These ancient beaches record 5,000 years of marine and mammal hunting by Eskimo peoples. Even today, Eskimos live on the land. They hunt and fish for survival, using techniques passed down through the centuries. At campsites, women trim and render the catch. Fish are hung to dry. Hides and meat are preserved. They used to live in sod houses. Now it's something less traditional. Every 75 years or so, in great storms, the ocean carries massive amounts of sand to the shore. Where once there were sandbars, new beaches appear, further out than the old ones. When this happens, Eskimos abandon their old homes and build new ones closer to the sea. Now there are 114 ancient beach lines stretching back from the water's edge, an unusual cultural record thousands of years old. Modern access to the Bering Land Bridge and Cape Krusenstern is through Kotzebue. This gateway community is very Alaskan and very much a frontier town. In summer, the beach bustles with activity. Fishing boats pull out the daily catch just offshore, while families depart for distant camps. Kotzebue is in tune to the seasons, but it's also in tune to the outside world. To the northeast is Noatak National Preserve, protecting the largest untouched river basin in the United States. Mountains huddle around the Noatak River, a natural highway for plants and animals, as well as wilderness travelers. Rafters of the Noatak ride in the wake of the first Arctic explorers. No dams block its waters. No towns or villages abut its banks. It is a rare, unaltered river system. The gentle Noatak River meanders 210 miles through a broad valley. This wild preserve is especially magnificent because it's unpolluted and pristine. Here, the tundra supports a thin veneer of life. Low-growing plants include fireweed, moss, and lichen. The caribou trudge across the tundra in relentless motion, as they have for eons. Unlike the rest of the deer family, antlers adorn male and female caribou. The nomads of the north range over 140,000 square miles, including 3 parks. The herd is North America's largest, at times numbering over 200,000. They have adapted to the extreme cold. Their hollow hair traps air and is excellent insulation. Their principal predator, other than man, is the wolf. Wolves hunt by stealth and ambush, and sometimes by relay, always looking for the weak and the sick to attack. For millennia, it has been this way, between the wolf and the caribou. During the summer, endless sunlight is a striking feature of this northern land. The sun makes a dramatic dip toward the horizon, but doesn't touch. 24 hours of sunlight fuel the growth of the plants during the long days. East of Noatak, the gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve is entirely north of the Arctic Circle. Here, at the untamed heart of the Brooks Range, northernmost extension of the Rocky Mountains, is the ultimate wilderness. Until recently, this was unknown to outsiders. So remote, it is nearly untouched. A land of pristine lakes and wild rivers. Spectacular peaks stand sentinel over this precious wild. Glacial carving has sculpted these granite cliffs and domes. Athabascan and Inupiat people gave these places names, but on modern maps, there are nameless valleys, nameless rivers, and nameless peaks. Robert Marshall, a founder of the American Wilderness System, brought these lands to public attention and pushed for their protection. He coined the name Gates of the Arctic. Now, their vastness ensures that future generations can discover the land for themselves. Summer is a brief splash of activity. It is so short that almost all the plants are perennial, and they hug the ground for warmth. Close to the ground, the temperature can be 40 degrees higher than the air temperature, a climate in the miniature. Birds from Europe, South America, Asia, and tropic islands gather here to breed and to feed on the outpouring of life. As the days shorten and the sun dips below the horizon, most will head south, some will stay, adapting to the extremes of the northern climate. As the leaves change into fall colors, the ptarmigan changes as well. Summer camouflage starts to turn white. They seek refuge from a passing storm. Snow falls any month of the year. The ptarmigan survives the long, fierce winter foraging, while others sleep under the snowy blanket. Access to gates of the Arctic is by float plane. River rafting and kayaking is a thrill for those who love adventure. 6 designated national wild and scenic rivers drain the park. The 9th largest river in Alaska, the Kobuk River, runs eastward to the Kobuk Valley. The dry, cold climate of the Kobuk Valley National Park approximates the Ice Age, supporting a flora much like the Bering Land Bridge 10,000 years ago. Although the park lies north of the Arctic Circle, some of its 25,000 square miles are covered in sand, the Great Kobuk Sand Dunes. "25 square kilometers of shifting dunes, where summer temperatures can exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The largest active dune field in the Arctic came from sandy riverbeds, transported by the winds. In September, ice clings to the banks of the Kobuk. Soon, the river will be frozen solid. Caribou head south by the thousands. North America's champion land migrators travel close to 1,000 miles each year through high mountain passes and deep forests, always searching for food, following the peak of the Alaskan bloom to the north in the spring, and returning south of the Kobuk for winter. To reach their wintering grounds, they must cross the Kobuk River. They search the river for a good spot to cross, not aware that the Eskimo are waiting, as they have for centuries, to provide food and clothing for winter. Hunting is a traditional way of life in the Kobuk Valley. Subsistence hunting is allowed inside national park preserves. Once they enter the water, the caribou are vulnerable. A rush of hooves. A shot. A caribou has been taken. More than an ancient ritual to the Eskimo, this is meat to feed a family. Alaska's northernmost parks hug the Arctic Circle, preserving ancient traditions and an ancient land. Southwestern Alaska is the land of the Aleuts. They clung to the edge of the sea. Using kayaks called bidarkas, they hunted the seal, the otter. Their powerful legends tell of skilled hunters, sea creatures, this land and the sea. Their land is partly in the national parks of the Alaskan and Kenai Peninsula. Along the edge of the Gulf of Alaska and the Cook Inlet, 4 parks occupy the land from the sea to the mountains. Katmai National Park, a rugged refuge for brown bears. Aniakchak, a volcanic showcase. Kenai Fjords is home to a great glacial ice cap. And Lake Clark National Park and Preserve shelters a diversity of lakes and 2 active volcanoes. Called the Alaskan Alps, this area is a mighty jumble of peaks where the Alaska and Aleutian ranges meet. Set in the heart of the Chigmik Mountains, the park boasts great geologic variety. Jagged peaks, granite spires, glaciers and waterfalls. 50-mile-long Lake Clark is a dazzling centerpiece to this array of scenery. Biological and geographic diversity also distinguish the Lake Clark region. Here are areas similar to Alaska's North Slope, while along the coast, the landscape bears a resemblance to the Alaskan Panhandle. The park's striking wildlife includes moose, Dall sheep, and fur-bearing marine mammals such as the sea lion. Only an hour west from Anchorage by air, Lake Clark is a whole world for exploring. No roads lead here, but small float planes can drop you on almost any of the lakes or streams to begin a wilderness journey. Set out in a boat, a raft, or on your own 2 feet. Hiking is a great way to explore the highs and lows of the park. Casual hikers beware. Only a few miles of developed trail cross this wilderness. Cross-country travel in the Alaskan tradition can be dangerous for the unprepared. Stay near open areas, and most importantly, watch for bears. Young bears are born during the winter hibernation. Helpless at first, they grow rapidly. Following their mother, they learn the art of survival during the Alaskan summer. In October or November, after the hills have turned red, the bears will hibernate. The rivers flash red during the legendary sockeye salmon runs. Lake Clark is a crucial spawning ground for Bristol Bay salmon. Millions of salmon return here after a 3 or 4 year foray into the Pacific Ocean. While not the biggest or most remote Alaskan park, Lake Clark combines all of the classical natural elements of Alaska. Volcanoes and bears, powerful and unpredictable, embody the wild heart of Katmai National Park and Preserve, southwest of Lake Clark, at the base of the Alaskan Peninsula. 15 active volcanoes are a reminder of how violent the Earth can be. Brown bears. Over 2,000 live here, the largest population of protected brown bears in North America. Pristine rivers with legendary runs of salmon lure fishermen like these. But not one wants to fish more than this bear. Bears in the park have the right of way, by law and by might. At times, fishermen move the bears along, but the park's rule is bears first, people second. The brown bear is one of the world's biggest land carnivores. In spring and early summer, Katmai's bears are forced to eat vegetation. They crave protein. Coastal bears will even dig for clams, or scoop up spawned-out fish. Small, but a treat while awaiting the summer and fall salmon runs. Nothing beats fishing at Katmai's Brooks Falls. They have different techniques. Wait patiently. Dive. Just be at the right place at the right time. Salmon are what make the brown bear big, really big. Bears eat salmon almost exclusively during the summer. Early in the season, they devour the fish whole. Later, they eat their favorite parts. Some eat only brains or skin, which is high in fat. The viewing platform at Brooks Falls offers great views of this wildlife spectacle. A careful system of rules and regulations limits human-bear confrontation. Unequaled in the United States, Alaska's streams and lakes draw adventurous anglers from around the world. The serenity of the fishing streams belies the nature of the park's origins. The heart of the park blew up in June 1912, one of the most violent volcanic eruptions ever recorded. In minutes, the landscape was devastated. Ash filled the air. Acid rain burned clothing right off the lines hundreds of miles away. Global temperatures cooled. Mount Katmai collapsed as a vent called Nova Rupta blew out 30 times more ash than the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. In places, the ash was 700 feet thick. In 1936, Father Bernard Hubbard, an intrepid geologist, led an expedition to the still-smoking valley. National Geographic had named it the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. The steaming vents are gone from the valley. Now the rivers cut deep into the ash plain. The smoldering pool of molten rock, called magma, that fueled the explosion, still simmers miles below the park, waiting to break out again. The volcanic story of Alaska is one of destruction and regeneration. Out of the violence of the Katmai eruption, new life took hold, and Katmai's story continues to evolve. Alaska is a land of volcanoes. It sits squarely in the middle of the long Pacific Rim of Fire, the chain of volcanoes that extends from South America, up North America to Alaska, and then down the east coast of Asia to New Zealand. This is the most volcanically active area in the world, and scientists are studying intensely the natural phenomena associated with volcanoes at Eniakchak National Monument. They are probing the surface to better understand the physical effects of volcanic events going back thousands of years. They are not the first scientists to study the area. In the 1930s, Father Bernard Hubbard made a series of intrepid visits, including one just after a 1931 eruption. Flying through the caldera, which is 6 miles wide and 2,000 feet deep, imparts a feeling for its immense size. At one time, it was probably filled with a lake, much like Crater Lake in Oregon. Other than scientists, few risk the violent storms and hardship to explore the raw beauty of Eniakchak caldera. Due south of Anchorage on the Kenai Peninsula is a landscape in the making, Kenai Fjords National Park. A mini ice age grips much of this park in a cold embrace. The smallest of the 8 Alaskan national parks, with one of the biggest ice caps in the nation. The Harding Ice Field is 300 square miles, a remnant of the Pleistocene ice masses that once covered half of Alaska. 400 inches of annual snowfall feed the more than 30 glaciers that flow out of it. They slide and carve, shaping the landscape. Witness creation of entirely new ecosystems. The ice, which once advanced in great sheets, is now retreating. The land left behind is a barren canvas on which nature creates a new masterpiece. The new ecosystems are a result of the elevation changes that support a variety of wildlife. In the upper reaches, mountain goats spring among the rocks. These adaptable creatures are more closely related to antelope than goats. Their thick hair helps them survive the harsh winters. Special hooves both cling to rocks and allow ease of movement on snow. On the edge of the park is the gateway city of Seward, named after Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State, William Seward. A boat from here makes access to Kenai fjords easier than most Alaskan preserves. These wet expeditions skirt the rugged shoreline. On the outer islands, marine wildlife thrives. The rocks, islands now, were mountaintops until they were forced under the sea by the approach of the North Pacific tectonic plate. Packs of sea lions live here. They can weigh over 1,000 pounds and have lived here long enough to smooth the granite. 4,000 sea lions inhabit adjacent coastal waters, as do 22 other marine mammal species, including the harbor seal. Exploring the fjords, the boats ease up to the face of the glacier, but not too close. In the icy waters, humpback whales cavort. Within the boundaries are private lands covering almost half of the coastline. Native Americans fished these waters and hunted the wildlife for centuries. Now their corporations own land here. The national parks foster new relationships between the people and their resources. Inland Alaska is the home of the Athabascan people, who lived a nomadic lifestyle for thousands of years, hunting in winter and fishing in summer. In Alaska's parklands, they can still hunt, fish, trap, and use resources within the preserves. Alaska's interior parks are distinct. Denali is home to North America's tallest mountain, while Yukon-Charlie Rivers National Preserve sparkles with relics from the gold rush, the fur trade, and native culture. You can see all three by floating the Yukon River through the park. Almost 2,000 miles from its source in Canada to sea, the Yukon is not only one of the longest rivers that flows through a national park unit, it is also Alaska's longest river. The small town of Eagle is a nearby jumping-off point for this adventure. From here, it's 155 river miles to Circle. Around every bend, scenery changes from the subtle to the profound. During the gold rush, the Yukon River was the summer highway for great sternwheelers, churning upriver to the Klondike gold fields. Then Eagle was a stopover town of 800. A few dozen of these shallow draft steamboats brought mail and supplies to the miners and took out gold. Later, more sophisticated miners used dredges, which are a reminder of a time when gold dust was legal tender. On Coal Creek and Woodchopper Creek, the giant machines once scooped up 3,000 cubic yards of gravel a day. One half of this preserve is named for the Yukon River, which drains North America's greatest mountain systems. Its opaque waters are filled with glacial silt. The preserve's other river, the Charlie, is a tributary and is designated a National Wild and Scenic River. It runs clear and cold. The Charlie meanders 88 miles through a wide spectrum of interior Alaskan landscape. The roar of the gold rush is gone, but fishing, fur trapping, and hunting, the other historic industries of Yukon-Charlie, are still allowed. Most of the preserve is a haunt for wildlife, the lynx, the porcupine, and beaver. Here the animals live in a timeless land, where decaying cabins are a gentle reminder of the prospectors and trappers who made this home. Mount McKinley rises 20,320 feet above sea level, almost in the geographic center of Alaska. It is North America's highest mountain, centerpiece of the glacier-strewn Alaska Range. McKinley shares Denali National Park with barren ground caribou, grizzly bears, wolves, and moose, an Alaskan menagerie. Denali is a complete ecosystem. This park is renowned for outstanding wildlife viewing on the 85-mile-long road that cuts through the Alaskan wilderness to Wonder Lake. Since 1972, a shuttle bus system runs people in and out, giving the animals breathing room. Another benefit, a busload of eyes makes spotting animals much easier. Grizzly bear are commonly seen. To live here, wildlife must adapt to the extreme winter temperatures. So summer is a frenzy of eating, building reserves of fat in preparation for the cold months. The pika's shrill whistle rings across the mountain valleys. This small critter harvests grass and plants, collecting piles to dry in the sun. During winter, the little hay bales are food. Moose love the lower areas of the park. In the spring, they feed on the first bloom. Later, they wade into ponds, searching for succulent water plants. Fall is a time of jousting among the males. Come winter, their long legs enable them to survive in the deep snow. After snow closes the park road, rangers harness their dogs. An Alaskan tradition is still alive as sled dogs and rangers patrol the backcountry. The airport at the town of Talkeetna, outside of the park, is the gateway for climbers attempting Mount McKinley. During the busy summer, the airport pulses with engine noise. The bush pilot is an Alaskan folk hero. A small plane offers grand views of the immense park. A gigantic jumble of peaks, unnamed spires jut around the horizon. This is the northern extension of the Rocky Mountains, backbone of North America. Planes deposit climbers on Ruth Glacier, miles from the summit. There is a dispute over who first climbed the mountain. The most intriguing story is about the sourdough expedition, which used dog sleds to struggle high on the mountain. They then carried a pole to the summit, at least what they thought was the summit. It was actually the North Peak, a few hundred feet lower than the South Peak. Historians give credit to 4 men led by Archdeacon Hudson Stuck in 1913. Since then, thousands have made the dangerous climb. In summer, the polar winds blow cold, and in winter, even colder, minus 180 degrees Fahrenheit. It is always a hazardous ascent. Mount McKinley reigns supreme over a magnificent national park, Denali. The southeastern coast of Alaska is the home of the people of the totem, the Tlinkits. Great warriors and traders, they built long houses of cedar. They continue to practice their ancient art in wood and in dance. Choreographed into the Tlingit dances are the legends of the creatures that live here: the wolf, the eagle, the raven, and the whale. The Tlingits' home, the southeast finger of Alaska, shelters wonderfully diverse and historic parks. Sitka, the last Russian outpost in America. Klondike Gold Rush, a reminder of man's thirst for gold. Misty Fjords, a beautiful wild bay near Ketchikan. Glacier Bay, a geologic showcase. And Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve, which features giant mountains, glaciers, and dramatic coastline. This mountain kingdom is the largest assemblage of peaks over 16,000 feet in North America and is festooned with glaciers. One rugged, isolated glacier, the Malaspina, is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. Some are among the world's longest. The 75 named glaciers and almost as many unnamed ones act as giant conveyor belts. As glaciers dig at the mountains, they carve the shape of the land. The rock and debris gouged out is carried in the ice and on its surface. Eventually, the long lines of dirt and rock transported by the moving ribbon of ice is dropped miles from its mountain origin. Beneath the surface of the glacier, a fantastic system of ice caves reveal the deep blue of the ice. Constantly changing in shape as the ice is carried down the mountain, these caves are beautiful and dangerous. Fully a quarter of this park is permanently covered in ice, and for more than half the year, much of the rest of the park is blanketed in snow. The immensity of the park defies belief. The size of 6 Yellowstones, it stretches from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Alaska, joining the body of Alaska with the southeastern panhandle. To really see it is to fly. In a bush plane, you're confronted with astounding sights. Mountains beyond mountains. Valleys beyond valleys. And glaciers that seem endless. As impenetrable as the wilderness seems, it is not inviolate. On the slopes above the Kennecott Glacier in 1900, 2 prospectors discovered a bonanza. Mines and a mill followed. In the early part of the 20th century, Kennecott was the richest copper deposit in the world. With a railroad connecting the mine to the coast, Kennecott became an outpost of advanced mining technology in the wilderness. The weathered buildings are deserted now, but left intact as a monument to the days of copper. As if the last shift just walked off when the mine closed in 1938. No one went to the trouble or expense of taking the tools, so here they stay. This National Historic Site is a moment in history, frozen. Just getting here is an Alaskan adventure. For a long time at the Kennecott River, a hand trolley has been swinging across the river to McCarthy. Miners gambled and drank in its saloons. Today, adventurers use it as a launching place for exploring Kennecott and the Wrangell St. Elias. One way to explore this park is to raft its rivers. Rafters see bears, eagles, and wolves. For the lucky, the smaller predators may be seen. The wolverine, a fierce animal of great strength. The lynx is another shy creature that is rarely seen. The Dall sheep are the only wild white sheep in the world and are closely related to the Rocky Mountain bighorn. Wrangell St. Elias is home to one of the largest concentrations of Dall sheep in North America. So outstanding is the wildness of Wrangell St. Elias and adjacent parks in Alaska and Canada that the whole area has been designated a World Heritage Site by the United Nations. Now entire ecosystems are protected within its boundaries. Few people penetrate beyond the park roads, so that the huge interior remains a place of magnificent isolation to awe future generations with its grandeur. Southwest of Wrangell St. Elias, Sitka National Historical Park is a relic of a different time. Along these shores, the proud Tlinkits lived in their fishing village, Shi-Atika. Known as the people of the eagle and the raven, these warriors were accustomed to winning battles until the double eagle of Tsarist Russia arrived. From Sitka, Russia ruled Alaska for the first half of the 19th century. The town and the park are loaded with reminders that this is a Russian town on American soil. The Tlingit tribe has not disappeared either. 2 colorful cultures converged here centuries ago. The seeds of the conflict were sown when Russian explorer Vitus Bering left Russia and sailed across what is now known as the Bering Strait in 1741. On his heels came fur traders and missionaries who turned Alaska into the eastern frontier of the Tsar's empire. Russians overpowered and enslaved tribes along the coast, They hunted soft, luxurious sea otter pelts. Their toughest resistance came from the Tlinkits. At this national park site, they fought for 6 days. Eventually, the Russians prevailed in Sitka and built blockhouses, similar to this replica, to protect the development of a Russian trading post called New Archangel. Their bishop lived here, a man who is now known as Saint Innocent. His house is one of the oldest buildings in Alaska and includes a chapel. Russian Orthodox services are still held here several times a year and throughout Southeast Alaska. The services St. Innocent held were almost identical to those in St. Petersburg, except perhaps for one thing. Tlinkits filled the pews. Orthodox missionaries attracted Tlinkits to the flock by taking time to learn their language and customs. Taking their message great distances over Alaska's wild, icy terrain, they converted 10,000 native Alaskans to Orthodox Christianity. And many Indians today consider the Orthodox Church part of their native heritage. The Tlinkits left the mark of the eagle and the raven in their art. These artists carve in the tradition of their ancestors. 1867, a year that changed Sitka and hasn't been forgotten. At Castle Hill, the United States signed the documents to purchase Alaska for $7.2 million, just 2 cents an acre. Even that seemed like too much for this expanse until prospectors found gold in the Klondike. About 100 years ago, the steamer Portland arrived in Seattle from Alaska with over $1 million worth of gold and uprooted 100,000 families. A Seattle paper reported the arrival of about 2 tons of gold and sparked madness in men and women. Dreamers from all over the world packed their bags and got on boats in Seattle, where the Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park begins at the southern site. Overloaded boats sailed up the inside passage to Skagway and Dyea. Not even half of the 100,000 would-be millionaires persevered this far. John Muir called Skagway a nest of ants stirred up by a stick. The busy workers built up the town in a flash. It wasn't all work, though. The Red Onion Saloon and Arctic Brotherhood Hall are from that era. Skagway today looks like it did 100 years ago. The Park Service has lovingly restored these Skagway buildings, making Klondike a very popular park. A stop for cruise ships, too. Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park is actually international because the gold the stampede was headed for was in Canada. Today, a narrow-gauge train crosses the White Pass, but in 1897, horses were the method, and it wasn't easy. This earned the name Dead Horse Trail because so many horses, undernourished and overworked, died and decayed here. From Dyea, the urgent stampede pushed uphill single file to meet their mightiest adversary, the Chilkoot Pass. This trail, part of which is in the historical park, tests modern hikers who have lighter loads, better equipment, and good summer weather. The 33-mile hike takes 3 to 6 days. For the strong and lucky who made it to the top of the pass in early 1898, the reward was a view of Canada and an easier trek to Lake Bennett. In the spring, when the river thawed, the stampede left Lake Bennett for Dawson, where the gold was. And it was there, but they couldn't have any. The 800 square miles around Dawson were staked and claimed before the stampede arrived. Heartbroken, many trudged home even poorer, hoping to piece together the families and lives they had so quickly left the year before. Instead of hitting the road, others hit the bottle, drinking themselves into the ground. Of the 100,000 who tried to get rich in the Klondike Gold Rush, only a handful found what they wanted. 100 years after the gold rush, even more people are coming here. This is Alaska's most visited national park, with over 500,000 visitors a year. The great natural heritage of Alaska is found not only in national parklands, but also in national forests. Misty fjords, a beautiful wild bay near Ketchikan, is a perfect fjordal system. No roads mark this Forest Service National Monument. Only planes or boats penetrate its recesses. Sheer rock walls, sculpted by glaciers, rise from 1,000 feet beneath the water's surface and soar 3,000 feet into a realm of mists and sky. Falls cascade into the sea. Tour ships safely skirt the cliffs that dwarf them. Bears stalk the shoreline. Eagles soar on air currents, and mountain goats wander the heights. Here one can feel the pulse of Alaska's wild wetlands. Another Forest Service protected area north of Misty Fjord is Admiralty Island, home of the brown bears. Named by the coastal people the Fortress of the Bears, its coastal stream provides abundant salmon for the giant Bruins. Bald eagles live here too. More eagles are found on this island than in all the lower 48 states combined. These Forest Service areas, along with the national parks, help protect wildlife's most precious need, space. Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve is Alaska's grand showcase of glacial activity. When Captain George Vancouver, the British explorer, sailed the Alaskan coast in 1794, he didn't see Glacier Bay. In its place was a wall of ice thousands of feet thick. Then began the most rapid retreat of a glacier system in recorded history, 65 miles in 200 years. A new land, devoid of life, emerged. The Tlinkits call it Sedaka, meaning the bay in place of the glacier. Also called Icy Bay, it attracted John Muir of Yosemite Valley fame. In an Indian canoe, he paddled into the bay in 1879, the first of 4 journeys where he confirmed his theories of glaciation. It is now understood that the land had sunk under the staggering weight of the ice. Now, with the weight removed, the land is springing back, almost an inch a year. Ancient trees, long buried under glacial ice, are now standing free. Just one of the dramatic elements that scientists are studying in this vast laboratory. They are also discovering how plants colonize the barren earth, how salmon come back to spawn, and how large mammals, such as bear and moose, repopulate the land. There are definite patterns of succession, with lichens leading to small plants, then to alder brush. Eventually, a spruce and hemlock forest will reach maturity, creating a rainforest cathedral. Underwater, change is less visible but equally dramatic. Seabirds covet the barren rock near the glaciers as prime nesting habitat. Safe from predators, the colonies flourish. Another group has returned as well, the Native Americans. Tlingit legends tell how an advancing glacier chased them from the bay, a fact confirmed by scientists. Now, like their ancestors, they are fishing once again in the uncovered bay. For the first time in perhaps 1,000 years, Tlingits dance on the shores of Glacier Bay. The park is challenged with balancing the needs of traditional cultures and protecting the land. Whales too have come back, making this one of the best whale watching experiences in Alaska. As many as 20 at certain times of the year. They feed mostly on small schooling fish. Large luxury liners offer another view. Many call this the highlight of their Alaskan cruise. A more intimate glimpse comes from kayaking. Sea kayaks paddle the length of the bay and with their shallow draft explore the most isolated reaches of the park. Camping on Glacier Bay's rocky shoreline is to experience Alaska in its rawest. Touch a new land firsthand. Watch plants struggle to gain a foothold among the rocky residue left by glaciers retreating into the mountains. And listen to what the Tlingit Indians called white thunder, calving glaciers. By geologic terms, today's glacial retreat may be followed by a glacial advance, as it has many times in the great fjord called Glacier Bay. Beyond the edge of the modern world, nature still holds sway. The forces of Alaska thrill and amaze. Great glaciers carve the earth. Thousands of caribou migrate across the tundra. Whales reach skyward. This is the legacy of Alaska's national parks, a reservoir of wild beauty. Alaska will always be America's last frontier.